that's no longer a functioning democracy. And as for Meloni, yes, she's a very talented politician, but she's also the one bringing the great replacement conspiracy theory into the heart of the European Union. And I think those theories, those talks about civilizational erasure, the existential threat for our nations of non-Western immigrants, are very dangerous for our liberal democracies.
Let's look at a new book that examines the relationship between fascism and democracy. The author and political scientist Rosan Smits says fascism is back, hollowing out democracies from within. It starts with language, not tanks, with democratic elections, and not a coup for the first time in modern history. Far-right parties in some European countries have won a larger share of the vote than the Conservatives and Social Democrats. And these are concerning signs for the author of This is Fascism, a wake-up call. Rosan Smits, welcome to Times Radio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
I gather your book has been a bestseller in the Netherlands. It's clearly touched a nerve with your compatriots.
Yes, absolutely. I think many people actually recognize the patterns that I was describing in the book.
So tell me what characterises something as fascism rather than, say, right-wing politics or even far-right politics?
Well, maybe it's first good to mention that my book really is a warning. Over the past 5 to 10 years, our democracies across the globe have eroded at lightning speed. Never before have so many countries backslided. So almost 50 years of democratic gains have been lost. And one of the main reasons, I think, is that our far-right populists are reconnecting to the tools and tactics of fascism from the past. Now, I'm not saying that these are all fascists, but they really are tapping from the playbook of fascism. And that's what I'm trying to describe. So how do you recognize the playbook at an early stage when there's still time to act?
And what democracies would you say that we have lost?
Well, clearly the US, that's a great example of how the playbook is being played out. Although I'm not sure whether Donald Trump is like a convinced fascist. He's clearly using all the tools and tactics to destroy democracy. But we do see the very same patterns here in Europe, in my own country as well. We recently had a far-right government that was really chipping away at the foundations of our liberal democracy by using, again, the same language, the same instruments that we see Trump using.
I mean, I think, there's a lot in what you say, but also there is evidence against what you say. So Viktor Orban, who might, I'm sure, feature in your roll call of people who were moving towards or adopting fascist-like tendencies, lost an election and, in fact, gave up power without a struggle. And also, even when the far right does win, Giorgia Meloni springs to mind, the Italian Prime Minister. People, I think, used to describe her as a fascist when she was an opposition politician. But she's been, in my view, one of the most impressive European leaders we've had in the last few years. She's really impressed. She's embraced Europe. She seems to be very centrist on a lot of issues. So how to put it bluntly, aren't you being a bit alarmist?
No, I don't think so. I think Viktor Orban his ousting is a great example of that there's always room to act. And we can actually learn a lot from that. But also talking to Hungarian activists, for example, they all say, don't let it come this far because we almost lost our country. To a point, to an extent even, that leftist political parties didn't even run for elections to give Magyar a winning chance. That's no longer a functioning democracy. And as for Meloni, yes, she's a very talented politician, but she's also the one bringing the great replacement conspiracy theory into the heart of the European Union. And I think those theories, those talks about civilizational erasure, the existential threat for our nations of non-Western immigrants are very dangerous for our liberal democracies.
I mean, you say that Giorgia Meloni's brought the great replacement theory in as a conspiracy, but when you think about the rise of populism, if you like, isn't it a perfectly understandable reaction to some of the problems that the West faces that effectively establishment parties have failed to address, certainly since the financial crisis? I mean, the European economy has stagnated, and yet there are no moves to kind of deregulate it. People are very worried about mass immigration and illegal immigration as well. And they're worried about the rise of Islamic extremism. These are all issues that concern ordinary men and women. And sometimes it feels often that it's only the populist parties that talk about it, and that the establishment parties simply just wish it would go away and politics should be as normal. So perhaps rather than attacking Giorgia Meloni for talking about this, one should say, well, why can't the other parties start to address these concerns?
Well, first of all, I'm not dismissing those concerns. I don't agree that centrist parties have not been talking about migration. They have. They did.
But not doing anything.
Time already. What is important is that the discourse around migration has shifted. So it's no longer a question about management, the management of migration streams, but it's really about targeting specific groups in our own societies as part of this danger. So that evolves into, for example, talk about remigration, deportation of citizens. And also, what we also see is that we see more and more violent protests in our streets, political violence in our streets, not only targeted at, for example, asylum centers and buildings, but at fellow citizens. We've seen it recently in Belfast. We had it last week here in the Netherlands as well. And I think this is all a result of this idea that migration is posing an existential threat to our civilization, and that migration is being facilitated by the progressive left or by the EU as an institution. And what we then see is that those politicians start to attack the very institutions that we have built to protect our democracies from backsliding like they did 100 years ago.
I mean, a lot of people would say to a certain extent that immigration is being allowed by the progressive left, or at least that they would take a view, ironically, actually, about the capitalist right, that immigration is being allowed because it provides cheap labour. And that was certainly something that played very strongly, I think, in the run-up to our own Brexit referendum, that lots of people, because of EU enlargement, had come to Britain and were driving down wages. Is that a fair point?
Yes, I do think that's a fair point. But the question is what you then do with that point. Is that a reason to dismantle like fundamental pillars on which your democracy is being built? And those pillars are built to protect everybody within society, to protect everybody's freedom and everybody's rights. Now, if you say that I might be alarmist in my book, the point is, I think that we keep on measuring fascism against those images that we have from the past, those horrendous images. That is the final, most radical stage of fascism, but that's not how fascism begins. It begins within our societies. It begins with elections. And as soon as far-right parties start to move towards the extreme and display willingness to do away with those fundamentals of our liberal democracy, then it can radicalize and it can move towards that point. And I rather point that out early than when it's too late.
And Rosan, are you finding that your message is resonating in the Netherlands and other countries?
Yes, a lot, because I think one of the main points of my book is the role of more the centrist parties or the more traditional right parties. Their accommodating behavior is crucial for the fascist strategy to succeed. Without them, they don't stand a chance. And we have seen those parties co-opting racist language, striking deals with the far right, And they all did that in the hope that they can hold on to power. But the opposite happened. They basically disarmed themselves as the kind of last line of defense for our democracy. So it really is a wake-up call to the centrist parties as well to act differently.
I agree. I certainly agree with that, Rosan Smits. Rosan Smits, the author of This is Fascism, a wake-up call to the centrist parties perhaps to act differently and address the concerns of many people. Rosan Smits' book, This is Fascism, is available at timesbookshop.co.uk, where Times Plus members will enjoy a 20% discount on that and indeed thousands of other titles.